Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hi.
I think it's taking some time.
Okay, I thought I had started. I will and I'm the head of the Department of Linguistics of Southern Federal University. Dear friends, participants of the roundtable discussion, Cross-Cultural Communications in the World of Today. Good morning. I don't know how I should do it because I'm using the telephone. So good morning, afternoon, and evening. I'm extremely pleased to see all of you in good health, and I'm grateful to you for finding time to be here today. It's my pleasure to welcome you and to announce the start of our roundtable discussion organized by the Institute of Management in Economic, Ecological, and Social Systems of Southern Federal University. Today's discussion will be moderated by Alexey Bakulev, Associate Professor of the School of Foreign Languages of National Research University of National University High School of Economics. Alexey, you're welcome to take over.
All right, dear Dr. Privalova, thank you very much for your introduction. So, dear colleagues, good, as we say in Russian very frequently, good time of day, right? Because we're all kind of distributed all around the world. I am really privileged to be with you here because, as Julia said, I'm currently affiliated with HSE University, which I'm feeling also proud of, but I'm also proud of once being part of the SFEDU team, right? I used to work at Southern Federal University and I worked there for 10 years, which I personally deem as, well, really good years, right? So I am double happy. Well, today, as I could understand the idea of the marathon, we are all sharing our cross and intercultural experiences and discussing, right, all those experiences and nuances, etc., that we all have. Yeah, we're all from different parts of the world. But, well, this fact, along with diversity, the natural diversity that coming from different parts of the world gives us, also emphasizes kind of unity, right? As Dr. Anna Pavlovskaya from Lomonosov Moscow State University reiterates in a series of her books on cultures and ethnicities, the world itself is a kind of a unity within diversity and diversity within unity. This is what can justly be said about Russia, right? Where I come from, where our SFEDU colleagues come from, right? So Russia is on the one hand a distinctively unified country in many senses. At the same time, there is quite a bit of diversity, ethnic, religious, linguistic, etc. So I guess this is really great that we all here can contribute to getting more aware of such diversities during this talk. And I guess without any further ado, may I give the floor to the first speaker, but just to remind us all of the of the protocol, so to speak. So each speaker has about 5 minutes. Am I correct? Well, yeah, about 5 minutes to share the experience. Yeah, some around 5 minutes, and then there could be a very brief discussion afterwards, right? So, and then at the very end, perhaps, well, I will rely a little bit on Dr. Privalova here, well, and on myself too. There will be a kind of a summation point, so to speak. And if you don't mind, may I give the floor to our doctor? Well, I hope I'm not mixing stresses or mispronouncing your names. If I do, please just apologize. I apologize to you. Please correct me. So, and let the first speaker be Michael Julius, Mr. or Dr. Michael Julius Boylan from the Department of English at the Arts Faculty of Orleans University, France. All right, Mr. Boylan, the floor is yours.
Hello to you all. I'm speaking to you from Orléans, France, where I've been teaching for the past 20 years, coming and going between England and the continent, and enjoying very much my job, of course. Although now things have changed considerably, of course, owing to the COVID-19, and I find that at the same time, paradoxically, there's things that are revealed with the pandemic striking simultaneously all over the globe. There's things that are revealed as paradoxical in themselves in our organization, in the way we apprehend problems, in our teaching methods and so on, the way we approach grading, for instance, assessment. Many things come to be revealed nowadays, which we took for granted for a long time. When I say we, I mean, I'm including myself in the teaching staff of the University of Orléans, of course, which we took for granted. I'll give you one example. In France, there's this sacred principle according to which we're not allowed to do any selection. The forbidden word is selection. Why? Because, as you know, or we should know, that the motto of the Republic, since the French Republic, since the Revolution, is liberté, égalité, fraternité. That doesn't need to be translated, I suppose. So, how does that come into play today? Well, in a very complex manner, because many students today consider that a pass is normal, regardless of the scale you're operating on. The assessment scale from 0 to 20 in France. In Russia, I think it's 1 to 5, something like that, or 0 to 5, something like that. With more and more students who consider that if they put in so many hours in amount of effort and time in the preparation, for example, of a given essay, they deserve an average mark A minimi. And if you tell them, look, I'm awfully sorry, but in terms of substance and form, your work is wanting. I'm not criticizing you naturally as a person, but I'm asking you to remedy the problem, not us teachers. We do our job, you have to adjust, and so on and so forth. And some of these people are going to respond. I'm not I feel no antagonism against them, of course, but they will say things like, but attendez, mais c'est normal, moi, c'est la moyenne, c'est normal. I mean, it's given the amount of work I put into this, it wouldn't be fair that if I didn't get an average mark. So that's just one example. So spelling, grammar is flying out the window. It's almost optional. And that's rendering our work very difficult. Honestly, it's becoming very difficult because we've less time to dedicate to research owing to the COVID, owing to these new conditions that are changing conditions. And I'm not criticizing government, but I mean, new measures. There's coming measures in the very near future. Again, in France, we're changing systems with regard, I mean, to the lockdown and the manner in which we teach. Now, at the moment, we're teaching in what they call officially hybrid style. That's 20% maximum of our students come to the university in flesh and bone, and they attend our classes. But we're facing our computers, and at the same time, we're addressing potentially the 80% remaining who are at home behind their screen. You follow me? So what happens is that cheating is on an industrial scale. It's a real massive problem, and I must say I'm fed up with all this leniency and this kind of discourse that's consistent saying, oh yeah, but this is only provisional and so on. It's not. And another thing, yeah, some of the students who come to our classes regularly at the university in flesh and bone, let's call it that way. They call it présentiel here. Okay, présentiel, la présence. Okay, we're here in flesh and bone, the real presence, phenomenologically speaking, we're there. And they say, class delegates sometimes say to us, it happened last week to me. I was walking through the campus, and I noticed half a dozen students there I hadn't seen in a little while. So I greeted them and asked them if they were okay and so on and so forth. Asked for a little news. And one of the girls there, class delegate, she's pretty bright and you know, adamant in what she says sometimes. But okay, she said, Mr. Boylan, I don't understand. It's not fair. So and so and so, we come to the university 3 times a week ever since the lockdown, first lockdown. Under the second lockdown, we're here twice a week, at least often 3 times a week, and we attend your classes. I mean, all our classes when the teachers are there, when they're there. But what happens is the teachers, they're not dedicating the attention they should to us. They're speaking to people on the other side of the screen. I'm sorry, and there's something eerie in this and something uncomfortable. And we feel that our participation, being there in flesh and bone, almost comes as a nuisance, like an interference. But because what's going on is the teacher's interacting, sitting in the room with us, but he's interacting with, let's say, potentially 80% of his students, all right? And the 20% who could be here, there's not 20%, never mind, but those who are here in flesh and bone, we're just there, waiting for something to happen, waiting for some question addressed to us or some interaction, which comes okay, but it remains pretty poor. It's difficult. So I told these teachers, I beg your pardon, these students, I mean, I know them pretty well, we know each other, said, don't be too harsh on your teachers. It's a difficult exercise, you know. But I told them, this sounds maybe a bit paternalistic. I'm very grateful that you come to the university, that you make the effort, but don't judge people. There's people who don't come to the university at the moment. Why? Because they fear the COVID. It's as simple as that. So things are not that, but I take your point. But I told them, I heard you, and I will discuss this with my colleagues in the proper instances, because it's genuine. I've no doubt about it. But you know, things are not simple. So that's more than 5 minutes. I can't just go on rambling on. But and it's a very poor introduction. But what I just wanted to say is that the COVID thing is with the COVID, there's a situation that's emerged where we have to redefine certain things, and that's also almost transcultural, because you've the culture of the teachers on the one hand, academics, learned people who read a lot, who've read throughout their entire lives, and a lot of students who come to the arts faculty and they don't like reading. They tell us, I want to become an English teacher. Okay, fair enough. So what can be done about that? What's the curriculum and so on? Then, oh, by the way, I forgot to say, I don't like reading. And I took a glance at the leaflets and so on. When I saw the bibliographies, I almost went mad. And I have a right to not like reading. And why should I be imposed these things? So here we are. That's where I'll stop for the moment. What do we do about this? Us teachers, where's the common ground upon which we can build something without being paternalistic, demagogical, or without being exceedingly harsh either? Honestly, it's quite a challenge. I'm sorry I was too long.
Well, no, thank you very much, Dr. Boylan. Well, and the problem is really urgent and I would say burning. So, dear panelists, do you have any questions? So at this, yes, Mr. Gatika, right? Or Doctor? Or can I just refer to you as Daniel? What is
Daniel would be
Daniel?
best.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's to share that. I mean, I completely understand what Dr. Boylan says, and it's pretty much the reality of at least my reality, working with future teachers of English. I just want you to know that you're not alone in the world. It only happens pretty far from France, and it is a reality. Students refuse to read.
Yeah. You know, I was at we had a big symposium at the Orléans University about 10 years ago, and there was a certain professor, I think Michalovskaya, I think she's retired now, and she came from Bratislava, and she was head of the philosophy. As I remember, I'm not quite sure, but I think she was head of the philosophy department at Bratislava University, and she did a wonderful presentation of a kind of sub-department. A complementary course she set up to integrate in the philosophy curriculum at Bratislava. And she said, "This to me that's tragic. There's something tragic about that." And this person, she was near to retirement. Okay, she said the problem is we had throngs of people enrolling. 3 months later, half the people had gone. And when we investigated, we exchanged with the students, the concerned people, as far as it was possible. The answer we were given was, can you imagine? We've got phenomenology classes, we've philosophy per se, plus history of ideas, and all that reading you're inflicting on us. It's too much. And the place almost closed down. She was on the verge of having that particular class suppressed, and that was at least 10 years ago. Oh.
And this is really disconcerting. Well, yeah. Well, especially, yeah, they don't like reading, especially longer texts. Well, cannot disagree. Well, thank you. And just because the agenda is a bit pressed in terms of time, let me then give the floor to Professor David Lawrence Urban, right, who, if I'm not mistaken, used to teach at Southern Federal or is currently teaching at Southern Federal, and who is a Fulbright scholar, if I'm not mixing anything. So, Professor Urban, the floor is yours.
Hello, and thank you all, and I'm very pleased to be able to interact and talk and to engage these different issues that we'll be talking about today. First, let me just say I'm sure for a lot of us, the COVID epidemic could be the subject that we all discuss, because it's had such a severe impact on our professional and personal lives, and particularly in the sphere of intercultural communication and exchanges. Prior to COVID, as you mentioned, I'm a visiting professor at Southern Federal University. I'm also a visiting professor at a university in China. And so during the COVID epidemic, I have been unable to actually physically travel to those countries and universities, although we have attempted to keep the relationship active by these kinds of virtual meetings and such. But I'd like to mention, I think, something a little bit different that's unique, perhaps, but maybe you all have the same experience with your universities. I'm at the University of Toledo in Ohio. It's a Midwestern university. It's a second-tier university, and we recruit a lot of first-generation urban students. And so in terms of intercultural communication, one of the challenges we have as professors, who of course have been educated at universities, are used to academic life and academic discourse, we have students who have never in their families had siblings or parents who've had the university experience. And so there really is a challenge to find common ground for communication with them, especially to encourage them to continue with their studies, because they find the culture of the university usually at first very, very strange and sometimes intimidating. So I'm very interested if anybody has similar experiences with students that are coming to their university from lower middle class, lower class families, and what they've found as being successful strategies to encourage those students. Otherwise, let me just quickly comment on the Fulbright program, which I'm sure all of you are familiar with. I have been very active in the Fulbright. It's one of the reasons that I established a professional relationship with Southern Federal. I also have a relationship with universities in Novosibirsk and St. Petersburg because of Fulbright. But also, let me say that my university has, whenever possible, been very supportive of my traveling to other universities. My department, the English department, has a sister university in Łódź, Poland. And I actually made my first trip as a professor when Łódź hosted an American Studies conference on Native American literature. And so that's the second kind of hook, I would say, for my traveling and engaging in intercultural exchanges, is the interest abroad for Native American culture and Native American literature. That's why I traveled to Poland. That's why I first traveled to Russia. So you see there sometimes aspects of our own cultures, like Native Americans here in the US, are very much abroad sources of interest. Russia has friendship societies for Native Americans, Poland as well, Germany does as well. So we sometimes find that actually when we arrive, as has happened with me, there's a lot of curiosity about, in my case, Native Americans, their literature, languages, etc. So I have already a kind of connection that I've been able to take advantage of professionally and personally. And I'll tell you one thing I've always found very curious, but interesting cross-culturally. In Moscow, you have a man who has devoted a good part of his life to Native American cultures, and particularly Plains Indian cultures. So much so that he handcrafts Native American clothing and ceremonial objects and such. And he has a little business that he runs off Facebook where he sells these handmade objects. And Native Americans here in the United States contact him and buy from him these objects which they use in their own, right, Native American ceremonies. So I think in terms of intercultural, communication, that's a pretty good statement of how it can actually work in a reciprocal way. It's not just one group learning or interacting with the other, but they find actually that the other group provides a very, very valuable, right, source of information exchange, in this case, actual clothing and ceremonial objects. So I would say personally, with COVID, I and the colleagues that I have here at the University of Toledo have been very much looking forward to our lives returning to something more normal so we can travel again. And I'm also very thankful that we've had a chance today to meet. And previously, Southern Federal hosted another workshop which included international colleagues. And so I think we're adapting, and that's been perhaps the biggest challenge with COVID, is forcing us to find ways to adapt while we wait for things to improve and hopefully become more normal. So thank you all.
And thank you, Professor Urban, for sharing your perspective. Well, dear panelists, do you have any questions or maybe comments? Right. So I don't think there are any questions, but well, before moving on to the next presenter, well, a brief comment is that, yeah, us being forced to go online, well, although we did make attempts to go online before, right, not only through MOOCs or some smaller online masters, for instance, or micro degree programs. Now we are all there. And like our vice rector, Sergei Roshin, says, so we will never get back to what it was before, but still we have an opportunity to preserve the offline things, right? That the offline bits of communication that bring us still close, right? Let's hope that, yeah, that really we will adapt. Well, and we are adapting to what we're doing now, but we will still get that opportunity to, well, maybe to walk across the Hall D atrium once again. Right, and the next speaker is the teacher of science and scientific English, David Jerome Coates. So, David, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm wondering if
well, David,
participants.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, you're in, yeah, okay.
Okay. Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. So I teach science in some very expensive private schools in Cambridge, but I come from a very international background. I mean, my parents are Australian, but my father is a professor of mathematics and he traveled around the world. So I grew up in France, and there I actually studied Russian at school for a few years, which got me interested in Russian things. And I almost went to Southern Federal University in April 2019, but unfortunately that's just when COVID was happening. So unfortunately the flights were cancelled and I couldn't go to Southern Federal University, but I hope to go one day. And I'm still studying Russian, but yeah, I've done, I mean, Cambridge is a very international city, and there's actually two universities in Cambridge. There's the old Cambridge University, the famous one. There's also Anglia Ruskin University, which is a very big university as well. And Cambridge is also full of language schools. We get very large numbers of students from all over the world coming to study English. And actually the thing I was going to talk about was that the churches in Cambridge have been running a number of international cafes for many years to welcome international students. And I've been a volunteer there for over 20 years. There's several cafes in church halls or in various buildings around Cambridge. And it's a brilliant opportunity to welcome these students who arrive in a new country. And we have like a quiz night or a international dancing evening, or we have lots of cultural activities, and there's a charity that runs this. It's called Friends International, and they have similar cafes in cities all around the UK. So yeah, that's my experience of cross-cultural communication. But I've also had the good fortune of teaching in Taiwan in a university in Taiwan for 4 summers, which was amazing. That was absolutely amazing. And then I also taught in Uganda in very remote rural schools in East Africa for 3 summers. So yes, I have an interest in all things international. But yes, my experience really is with these coffee bars or cafes, which are tremendously successful. And many of these international students who come to Cambridge, which includes Chinese visiting scholars who come to Cambridge University, they say that it's very hard to meet local people. But if you run a cafe, which is free, and they can just turn up and there's fun activities and they can sit down and practice with the volunteers like me, who are English people, who are there to chat to them. So I would strongly recommend running such cafes in any city in the world, because it's a brilliant way to make friends and to help the visitors to actually feel at home in a city. Because if you come to England, how do you start talking to an English person in the street? But if you come to a cafe, you can actually start talking. So yeah, that's probably my main point. I teach in a private school in Cambridge. We get students from Russia, China, and yes, I mean, I notice, particularly with the British students, there's this terrible, they don't want to read, they don't want to study, so I can echo what other people said about learning, that the new generation have no idea how to study. And I think it's partly because they use their phones all the time. So everything is instant culture. So they don't want to read, they don't want to study, apart from some exceptions, of course. But, okay, that's enough from me.
All right, thank you very much for your perspective, David, for sharing it with us. So, dear panelists, would you like to have a question or to make a comment?
Yes. Good morning. Well, for me, it's good morning here in Chile. I was wondering how people appreciate this instance of sharing a coffee all together. I mean, in terms of, here in Chile, it would be not that probably natural for people to go to a church or to an activity organized by a church in order to sort of share and interact with others. How do people take it there? It's an interesting idea, I have to say.
Well, I think, to be honest, I mean, as I say, these cafes have been running for over 20 years, or 30 years, I think, and there's now a charity called Friends International in the UK that runs it. But I think it's very well run. It's very carefully run. There's no pressure on people. You know, you can turn up as an international student, play the games, have fun, drink coffee, talk with the people there. And that's it. You don't have to do anything religious. For those who are interested, they are welcome to attend a Bible study in a separate room or something if they wish to. But there is genuinely no pressure. And it's been run in Cambridge for many years. And sure, you're right. Some people will probably think, I will probably not go because they think it's in a church. I'm just not going to go for various reasons. But a lot of other people think they'll just go along and try it, and then they have a good time. And as I say, it does provide. You don't have to do it in a church. You can do it anywhere. But the question is how you advertise it. In Cambridge, we advertised in the local language schools, and we've built up a good relationship with them. So the students see posters and they just go along on a certain evening of the week. In fact, some of them are so keen that they will go on 3 different cafes on 3 different nights. So it is tremendously successful. And I mean, Christians are pretty well organized so that they have, like, there's a workforce of volunteers who are keen to do it. But you don't have to be a Christian. Anybody can do it who wants to make contact with international students. And it's very rewarding. I mean, when I started in the 90s, I'd never met people from Asia, but I suddenly met Koreans, Chinese, Japanese, and it was a whole new world that opened up to me as a volunteer. So the volunteers benefit a huge amount as well.
So it's not something religious, is it?
Sorry, who was that asking that question? I missed it.
No, no.
Oh, sorry, Christian.
Yeah, I'm Christian. So it's not religious. It's not something religious, right?
Well, I mean, no, not really, but it is. Yeah, you know, as I say, I have to be honest. The people who run it are in the UK are evangelical Christians, so they do give the opportunity if people wish to go to a Bible study in a separate room. Then halfway through the evening there'll be a short announcement if you wish to go to that. But there's no pressure, and a lot of people just attend the events. So it is run by Christians, but it's yeah. There might be other things as well. Like there might be a trip for a walk around town or something like that as well. But there you are. I hope that answers your question.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, then. Thank you very much. And now it's time for the next speaker to take the floor. And the next speaker is the Associate Professor of the of the Department of English Language and Linguistics at Complutense University of Madrid. So Elena Dominguez Romero. Well, I hope I introduced you correctly. So you have the floor, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So give me a second. Okay, sorry for taking some time to find my screen. Sorry about it. So first of all, I would like to thank Professor Julia Privalova and the organizers for having me in this round table. It is a big pleasure and a great honor to be here today. And today I would like to bring out the importance of to put the emphasis on this, to bring out the importance of improving digital non-verbal communication. Our students are digital and non-verbal communication skills, which are no doubt or are supposed or should be or are meant to be no doubt cross-cultural skills. Why? Well, we all know that 21st century digital communication modes are characterized as being mainly online and inherently multimodal. Video conferences, video calls, web conference, webinars, Zoom rooms like this one surface to illustrate this. So digital communicators such as YouTubers, Twitters, and influencers are parts of our everyday culture. So 21st century effective communicators, cross-cultural communicators need to acquire new literacy skills related to both oracy and digital oracy competencies. This means beyond verbal language. So I think that students created digital videos, enhanced oracy skills by means of enhancing digital skills and developing higher order cognitive skills. Because in video production, the language learner is given a choice not only about what to say, but also how to say it and how to present a point of view. So approaches leading to an effective blend of digital and traditional resources, believe it or not, are still vague in the COVID era. And that's the reason why I thought it would be good to bring this out today. In the post-COVID or COVID era, quite unfortunately, still COVID era. So with this in mind, and this is an example that I would like to share with you, we had our students, our university students, delivering in-class oral presentations and recorded, so delivering in-class oral presentations and recording video talks to compare the two communication modes. And I can say that students who failed or who felt or who self-reported that they had performed better in video talks, they felt more self-confident recording the video than delivering the presentation in class. They described video presentations as a helpful way to ponder over their own way of speaking, and they highlighted the fact that the process of recording and editing had been fun and enjoyable, taking place in a safe, non-threatening environment. On the other hand, students who indicated that they had performed better in-class presentations, they reported feeling more secure with this traditional way of communication as they were not used to video presentations. They described the difficulties that they had when talking to the camera with no audience or real-time references, and they felt pressure thinking that their videos would be uploaded to the internet. So challenges when delivering in-class presentations, and I quote from my students, you only have one opportunity to do it well. It is more difficult to speak in public. You have to do it in real time. You have to keep the audience's attention in all the time, and you can make a mistake. I feel very nervous speaking in public. It requires more preparation, or you have to connect with the audience. As for challenges when delivering video talks, I had the feeling that it had to be almost perfect, and this was very difficult to do. It was the first time I had recorded myself speaking in English. I was not sure about the quality of the video. I feel uncomfortable in front of a camera. We're more used to doing presentations to an audience. Mistakes are recorded and permanent, or I had no formal knowledge of editing skills. So we know that the difficulties involved in conventional presentations, in conventional communication are widely known, but the complexity of video production is often underestimated, while a large numbers of students feel rather insecure when producing video presentations because they feel intimidated in front of a camera. So non-verbal, cross-cultural, digital language issues are evident here. So the use of kinesics in traditional face-to-face communication is well attested in the literature, but the use of kinesics in digital communication has not entirely being explored or entirely being explored to date. So I would like to bring out today the idea that it would be good to analyze our students' kinesic performing nonverbal performing communication skills, which are cross-cultural skills in both traditional and digital settings, as they both play an important role in the performing stage, being crucial for effective verbal communication or just communication. Because I believe that our students need to acquire digital oracy skills to improve their traditional oracy skills and become effective communicators of the 21st century across cultures. That's
all right. Okay. Thank you so much, Professor Romero. Dear panelists, so Jose Manuel Raya, right? I hope I'm correct. So you're welcome. you had a hand. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Now then comes Christian Hernan Campos, right? Okay, you're welcome with your question. Well, at least the hand shows that you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Elena, for that presentation. And my question has to do with the difficulties students encounter to actually produce visual, audiovisual material, because even though these days, you know, there are plenty of resources online, do they all like to do this? Do they all feel like at ease when preparing this audiovisual materials? Do they find it challenging or not? Is it at the same time challenging and a little bit troublesome for the academics to also engage in this video production, and also the literacy part of it, because it takes some literacy, you know, it takes some preparation. It has actually taken me some time to be sort of more willing to do that, to go about it, you know. It's because we were not used, I was not used to that because of COVID and the pandemic and this virtual environment. I've actually faced that challenge myself. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Professor Sanwetha. The thing is that, of course, they found it challenging. They said, I had no formal knowledge of editing skills, but the thing is that you cannot go against reality. This is what we have. We are teaching 21st century students. They are supposed to well, it's not they are supposed to be familiar with this. It is that they are familiar with this technical devices. They know how to do it. The problem is that they do it for themselves, just for fun. And the thing is that we need to channel all that potential they have for communication purposes. And that's what I wanted somehow to teach them. It's just like, well, you're using your self form for just for fun, but then just use it. You need to know, you need to learn how to channel all this knowledge that you have, because this is the communication of the future. So we know that, believe it or not, you might like it or not, this is how we're supposed to communicate in the 21st century. And this is even more so because of the COVID situation that we are living. So we had to just jump into the digital world, and we managed, and we all managed to survive and to serve the digital world. Well, but that's it. But our students need to be ready to communicate in a digital world, because they live in a digital world, and they are supposed to start working in a digital world, and they need to be ready for that. So we teach them how to write, how to read, how to analyze sentences, subject, verb, predicate, but then they also need to know how to communicate in a digital setting, the digital setting, which is more present than the future now. And the thing is that they use it all the time. It's just like they don't use it for good reasons or good purposes, like just for fun. But this is also important for life.
All right.
Real life, right?
All right, thank you. And probably quite a brief question from Jose Manuel Raya. Right, so your hand is back.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
So it's for Elena. So I think it's an activity, a very interesting activity about videos and these things. But do you think attendance to these webinars or videos pay enough attention to the conferences? And another part of the question is, do you think teachers have problems with the IT? Because I know for children it could be exciting, but maybe for teachers, maybe it's a problem.
For teachers, well, we were the teachers and we had no problems. Teachers, I know I teach teachers, and they are all happy with the idea, because they know that this is a very good way to motivate students, not only university students, but also secondary school students. And they use these devices, and they are used to communicating to digital. They are familiar with digital communication. So this is challenging for them, but at the same time, this is motivating for them. So since it is motivating for students and it works for students, it works for teachers. At least for my student teachers, it was like a good idea, and I know for sure that they are implementing these practices in the high schools nowadays. But the thing is that this is what they are doing, what our students are doing nowadays, and this is what motivates them. And we can't just go against this, because this is 21st century communication. So we need to teach 21st century communication skills, because now that they're using these devices and now that they're communicating this way, it is just our role to just teach them how to just do it correctly, inverted commas, right? And how to use these devices they like so much for good reasons, for learning purposes. That'd be the idea.
Thank you.
All right, then. Thank you so much. And now the floor is given to Dr. Sebastian Bakalarczyk, Professor of Economics at the Department of Management and Industrial Engineering of Łódź University of Technology, Poland, also an active member of a variety of EU commissions, and the honorary doctor of Southern Federal University. So, Sebastian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for giving me the stage. It's the honor, and of course, I would like to thank all of the participants for the invitation and for the situation when we have possibility to discuss and so distinguished guests, colleagues, professors. David said something about Łódź. It's my home city. I'm very proud because I'm coming from Łódź, which is the post-industrial city, and I'm working at the university, which actually it's technical. But as you said, I'm the professor of economics and management. I graduated the University of Łódź, and of course, I also graduated London School of Economics. And it's the reason why I try to be active teacher, visiting professor in different countries. And yes, last year I was awarded by the Southern Federal University the honor degree of doctor, which I'm very proud, but unfortunately by the pandemic situation, I couldn't take it back personally, and I'm still waiting. You know, on the last Saturday, it was the first anniversary when I received the degree, but I'm still waiting for the personal possibility to take it back from the scientific council. But about the communication and about the differences, because it's the main point of our today's meeting, of course. First of all, I want to share with you my experience, because I'm the visiting professor of the University of Tokyo and the University of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, USA. And, you know, if I take the comparison between East, West, and Poland, which is actually in the middle, I have the experience between three different cultures, because, you know, in Japan, I have the experience of the last 4 or 5 years. In the first year, it was only possible to listen people typing the keyboards. It was all of the time only the typing the keyboards. In the second year, I was listening only they are still alive and breathing. After a few years, I received 2 questions. The first one, is the email professor you gave it us, is it correct? And the second, with apologizing me several times, could you repeat the last question, professor? It was the experience from Japan. From US, completely different, as Professor David know exactly. In US, students are using the first names of professors, and it's nothing special. We simply do it. Fortunately, I'm the professor at the Wood University, and I have classes for the students in English, fully given in English, because we have special international faculty. And, you know, it is possible to have somehow like this schizophrenia, because my Polish students using my title and they are very respectful and so on. But in English, my faculty students speaking to me using my first name, and it could be confused for all of the parties, because it is different. But telling about the distance learning and about the online learning, of course, I have the feeling nowadays when my students, after 1 year of the pandemic situation, they are stopped to use the chat to communicate with the lecturers, with the professors. They are willing to see the face of the professor, and they have no problems with showing their faces to ask the questions. And the connection, even if it's realized online via internet, via Teams from Microsoft, of course, we can see it. It is more popular nowadays for my students than previously. And of course, last year, I gave at the Southern Federal University the open lecture about digital innovation. And I said, for me, it's nothing new, but several or even teams of my colleagues, friends, professors from my faculty, but not only from my university, but also around the world, I mean the world widely, they have some problems with speaking to the camera, to the flashing light over the screen without, you know, interaction with students. And even today, I talked to the candidate for PhD, and he said to me, you know, professor, there is the lack of reading between sentences about the body language, because we can see only the voice, not always the face. Your gesticulation, it's missed because you are showing us something, and only in the background there is the voice of the person who is describing. And of course, I'm very lucky because my students feel free to ask me some questions, and they are very active, because maybe I have some experience from different parts of the world and I know how to stimulate them to ask the questions. But 2 years ago at my university, as the first in Poland, we started something what was invented or maybe introduced in late 90s in the Boston University. Exactly, it was MIT. I mean, flipped education. In my field of the management, it is possible because I'm going to introduce them some topic, and I ask them to find some information to answer my question when we can next meeting, or they have the opportunity to ask me the questions in the given topic. They are preparing themselves for doing it, and they are asking me the questions. We have the reverse situation. I'm not asking questions to my students, they asking questions to me, and I'm obliged to answer them questions. And it's the best idea when we have the communication in the online version. And of course, at my university, but it's also the experience of the University of Pittsburgh and even the Tokyo University, the online and personal teaching is stimulated by two things. Sometimes we have recorded lectures, and it's obviously easy for students because they can do it in any time they want. And secondly, we have education which is actually synchronized or unsynchronized. It means if we have synchronic version, like today and now, we have interaction, we can ask questions, I can see your faces, your reactions when you are doing something like that, when you are showing some fingers, you know, even David what said something about which, without interrupting him, I show my finger into the camera and he reacted and he know what I'm speaking about. It's the reaction, and we should think about the digital innovation, because, you know, for people who are 20 or even younger, it's obvious to use any source of the devices possible to find on the world. For the older people, I mean older than younger, I mean in the middle age, they have some problems because, you know, it is connection. I was participating the meeting when our previous rector, who is actually 86, was fighting with the teams to show us the presentation. But I was very proud because he's 86 and he wanted to show us the presentation, which was actually prepared by himself, and he didn't give up. He started to present, and after some, funny things, because his face was very close to the camera with the mimics, which was actually realized in the same time, just in time, we saw how he's reacting. And in this case, I'm really privileged because we have some opportunities to simply skip the era of introducing digital learning, and we're skipping directly. And Professor Bolan said about the fear or even the reverse when the students don't like to read. I have no idea how it's in the linguistic department, but in the management department, my faculty and the area I'm interested in, I mean management and innovation and digital innovation as well, my students are reading all of the time. And I'm very proud of them because they try to find some extra knowledge, not only given by the tutor, by the lecturer, but they also reading even the novels or something only for reading because they want to develop the skills, speaking in languages, and of course, being very attractive in the philosophy and any kinds of knowledge possible to find into the world. It's more or less what I want to say. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Professor Bakalarczyk. Well, I see there is a question from Nafisa Katarwala, correct? So you're raising your hand, so you're welcome.
Yes, sir. More than a question, I have a request that I'd like to be the next speaker to go ahead and present because the month of Ramadan is on and I'm yet to break my fast after a spree of ritual.
All right, then. Thank you. That will be done, sure. Well, before you speak, is there anyone who would like to ask a question or briefly comment on what was heard?
If I may.
Oh yeah, sure.
I didn't stress this enough, but there's also positive aspects to the new deal we have at the university at the moment in Orléans, in France, at large, because I see that the channels of communication have multiplied in exponential fashion. It's just incredible. 2 years ago, just prior to the COVID onslaught, we got very seldom we got phone calls at the office where I work. People would knock at the door, and students, I mean, they'd be rather bashful. They'd leave a note in my pigeonhole, that kind of thing. Emails were rare, very brief and formal. Many of them with too many grammar mistakes. I must say, French is such a complicated language, and I'm speaking about people who are French students their mother tongue is French. I'm not even mentioning the foreigners, but anyway, foreign students. But so now we have 2 professional email addresses. We have Teams, we have Skype, it's just incredible. But I noticed that I did have a few colleagues at the beginning of this new era saying, "Oh, this is pretty exciting. Let's do our best given these unforeseen circumstances." Okay, and we're doing our best, and then the enthusiasm dropped a bit because we had to be introduced. We had to be to learn to master all sorts of different software. And with no choice, because that's where the exams are going to be taken and so on and so forth. But anyway, what I noticed with the students in terms of communication between the students themselves and us towards the students is that not only do they use lots of different, I mean, for one particular student, for instance, it's not rare that he or she is going to be using 2 or 3 media or vectors, if you prefer. It's going to be Skype, it's going to be Teams, it's going to be during classes, shy persons, it's a shame, but doing modern contemporary living languages, but they're always a bit hesitant when it comes to expressing themselves orally, even if they're not in the presence, the physical presence of their classmates. So what they do is they send me a message on my email to my email addresses, or on Teams and so on. And I discover that after the class, because I tell them, look, I'm facing, say, 50 people here, 50 students. There's 50 of you roughly today. So I can't answer here and now in situ. I can't answer all your remarks, your questions that you put in written form. But thank you all the same. And I shall pay the attention these messages deserve after the class for tonight. And I promise you, I'll answer. I'll answer every single message. And so that's interesting. And I find that qualitatively speaking, in terms of substance, you know, I'm formed too. People are really making efforts, because I tell them, okay, for your request or your remark, fine, but don't forget your spelling, or, you know, I can be pretty harsh. This spelling is unacceptable. You're in third year at the university. You shouldn't be making these spelling or grammar mistakes. Imagine you're facing a magistrate for some important matter, or an employer. You're applying for an internship, and you say, hi, you guys, when you're introducing yourself, or you make these terrible grammar mistakes. It's just not acceptable. It's substandard. But then I stress what the issue at hand, what's being discussed, or the topic of the student wants to broach upon. Then no problem. But I insist on it, and I find it's very encouraging that people, I say most of them, honestly, they're improving. They're improving, and it sounds strange. Maybe these people are going to be 20, 22, 25 and beyond, but still they need encouragement, I find sometimes. So they find ways and means of coming up with the questions that's a bit administrative. It's not my decision, this thing, and they know it. I may have a stamp on my signature, but I'm not the person who's going to decide. I'm not I can't. The question should be asked to the administration. But behind that formal question, there's something that worries the student, or there's something he or she wants some advice, but she doesn't dare ask this in front of the rest of the class or in other contexts. And I find it very interesting, this new dynamic situation in terms of communication. And it's not the brief messages of the very formal type don't exclude things that are much richer and require more vocabulary and thinking out what you mean to say, to put it in acceptable written form. So people are, you know, we're doing our additional classes, so to speak, via these channels. Sorry.
All right. Well, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, may I do some remark?
Just very quickly, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. I try to be quickly as well. I'm first of all, thank you very much, Professor, for your words. But I noticed something more, because the time of working nowadays for the professor at the university is going to start in the morning when you are opening your eyes, and almost it is finished just before you put your head on the pillow. Absolutely. Because they are expecting, I mean, the respondents or senders, when you are answering immediately, in the very good form, of course, but directly to the question asked in the email, for example. But of course, for me, important is also something different, because nowadays we are looking for multitasking. Can you imagine myself, after 1 year of pandemic, I have my desk, 3 computers, and I'm able to participate even in more than 2 meetings, because I have 1 computer, 1 device when I'm speaking to my dean, the second when I'm looking for something doing by my students, and I have, for example, my mobile phone when I can see the live story of Instagram, because it's connected with the topic of area I'm interested in. You know, like this stupidness. Come on, we are not willing to be robots. We don't want to be, you know, humanoids. We are people.
That's the reason why I have no mobile phone. I've never had one, and I don't think I'll ever have one.
Lucky you. For me, it's too expensive to have no phone.
A lot more than we used to before, but for different things. I haven't sufficient time to indulge in any research. For instance, I've not had time at all since I know almost it's been a year now. Nothing really serious. It's just not enough time because, as you just said, there's so many channels and so on, and so many.
It's like bombarding us from different channels, into our heads. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep. Well, thank you, dear colleagues. And now the floor is given to Professor Nafisa Katerwala. If I read it correctly, from the Narasi Monji Institute of Management Studies, India. Yeah, correct. So with sharing, contextualizing cross-cultural communication through diversity and inclusivity, an Indian experience, right?
Yes, sir.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. I teach at the School of Business Management at Narasi Monji Institute of Management Studies, which is a deemed university. And I teach at one of the top 10 business schools in India. And I have been hearing the conversations of other colleagues, and I felt that I must share my own experience of how Indians are culturally oriented. And particularly more than the Indian university students, since I teach at the School of Business Management, I'm also interested in how corporate organizations respond to this cultural challenge. So the Indian diaspora boasts of heterogeneous cultural influences, and diversity is a very important aspect of our cultural identity. And in post-colonial metamorphosis, we found that cultural representations have drawn from religion, ethnicity, community, and even gender. So we find that we typify ourselves as parochially determined insular cultural ghettoization to a broad-minded, secular and cosmopolitan inclusive culture. So Indians are very diverse in their cultural interpretations, and they have many influences. And basically, if you look at institutional representations of culture, then you can see the patterns of communication which unravel cultural symbolism from most Indian organizations, which would represent a part collectivist or a part individualistic and a hierarchical and a high context culture, as Hofstede would classify us. More than that, the milieu generally reflects status barriers, in-group association, and even issues of gender discrimination, where a predominantly masculine overtone actually permeates the organizational cultural discourse. So if you talk about Indian organizations, or if you talk about Indian universities, you find that you will see that status barriers are very prominent, and that we are hierarchy conscious, and we are power conscious, and at the same time, we also use a masculine tone in our cultural discourses. This is actually reiterated by Hofstede's research, which means that for us, it is important to be achievement-driven, successful, and highly competitive to influence the organizational discourse, both whether we are students at a university or we are working in organizations. We also see the cultural diversity to be interrupting the straight-jacketed classification. So we go beyond Hofstede, and he himself is confused about whether we are collectivist or individualistic, because we go both ways. And since Indians believe in the karma philosophy, we believe that we are responsible for what we do, and at the same time, we use the larger social framework to communicate through that. Of course, we are in a patriarchal, male-dominated and power-differentiated society. Though many influences which permeate the culture resonate with fragmented influences. Overall, the Indian cultural representation is that of a strongly diverse culture, which is drawn from its post-colonial self-determining self. And I believe that our nationhood is responsible for doing this to us, because the entire fabric of diversity is about, how India got its power from the colonial shall we say, from the colonial, slavery. And we know that a lot of this emancipation jargon that has been happening here, and the parochial diversity that we have been able to, bring about, is also because of, we are constantly in a struggle to redefine ourselves post-independence. We understand these significant influences and their impact on cross-cultural communication to interpret the meaning of these processes beyond axiomatic assumptions. There could be a lot of value-laden assumptions about why we do what we do. And India is a culture which actually upholds, a spiritual extension of self as well. So beyond cultural mores, there will be, values, there will be societal anxiety to stick to, certain ways of doing things. And there will be both traditional and modern influences which run simultaneously. And that kind of, is very chaotic. For instance, the Indian way of formalization of organizational communication includes a collectivist proclivity to be inclusive, and we reinforce the established norms or rules. There will be strict punishment for outliers. Even dress codes are not allowed to be trespassed upon. We strongly hold dress codes as very important, or we hold symbolism of a certain culture to be very important. And this type of codification actually receives a rule-bound sanction to influence social behavior, particularly in socialization processes when people join organizations or when students join universities as sophomores. We rather, rather than allow people to be individuals, we do like to force conformity. At times, this could be equally interesting because Indians also allow you a lot of freedom to remain independent of the larger social framework, which kind of leads us to believe that Hofstede was right in a way when he said that it's a part collectivist, part individualistic. Of course, the organizational discourses on communication often resonate with messages of conformity-seeking, power-dictated voices, which are situated within the cultural denominations. And again, this could be, regionally determined. So you will have people from different regions of India who will, demonstrate and influence these discourses very differently. India is a ubiquitous melting pot of cross-cultural fertilization. We all know that. And most regional subcultures use an overwhelmingly masculine voice. So India seems to be, the same wherever you go. You find, a similarity in, contextualizing your communication processes, because you find that overall India is a male-dominated society. And you have to negotiate the local differences to formalize an organizational voice, which seems the regional voice of perhaps a Bengali or a Maharashtrian or a Malayali or a Tamilian or a Punjabi. Now, these are, some of the regional variations that you would see when people, communicate cross-culturally. So despite such multicultural assimilation, these voices also remain disparate with their own unique identity. And therefore, you find that a Maharashtrian is unique from a Punjabi, and a Punjabi is unique from a Tamilian, and a Tamilian is unique from a Bengali. And they use regional overtones to shape their communication processes. So you'll generally see in-group association, wherein team socialization processes, members of a certain regional community would try to dominate and influence the rhetoric of the team, and also influence member behaviors to align with the regional cultural contextualization. So if you have a Malayali boss, then you will see that the Malayali boss will influence, the context of how people behave in group association, in teams, and how they work together. So in organizations, for instance, where the top management comprises of members hailing from Bengali or Malayali communities, these leaders would ensure that socialization follows certain overtones of regional cultural influences. And this subtlety goes beyond, their own regional, anxiety. The subtlety is about how to transact their roles more meaningfully. But then leadership gets negotiated through the cultural prism as well. The political dynamics of such interactions would depend upon how significant such cultural contextualization is to the formal business of the organization. And the jostle and push for power often makes the cultural discourse more relevant to the identity of those who negotiate these influences to leverage them. So when I was teaching at a Canadian university, I found that students were homogeneous. In India, we find very heterogeneous campuses. I mean, you find that students would be hailing from different parts of the country, and they would not be culturally.
There must be some technical issues on your side. All right. All right. While Professor Katarwala is dealing with her technical issues, probably someone would comment what has been heard, or well, it looks like there are some serious connection issues. So yeah, probably some comments would work now. Okay. And the issues don't seem to be resolved. All right. So then at this point, allow me to move on with our conversation. And the floor is given to Daniel Ricardo Torrejon, a professor of linguistics from the Universidad de Playa Anca. I'm sorry if I mispronounced the name of your university or your name. All right, so
right, matter. It's part of what we're doing here. You know?
Okay, yeah, sure. Well, it's also intercultural communication in a
Absolutely.
sense. Yeah,
Totally.
agree. Well, all right, Professor Torrejon, you are you have the floor.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I just I wanted to say thank you first of all to Julia and the whole and her whole team for the invitation. It's a wonderful experience. Why I wanted to tell you mostly is something, a bit of an experience that we've been working on, and something that has come up particularly from questions and discussions that we've been having with students due to this current pandemic situation, in which we actually can't be face-to-face with the students, and then when we need to have all these different video conversations similar to this one, right? The university has actually tried to come up with several seminars and discussions to find out what students are really interested in and would like to work on their own. And some of the things that came up is that we came up with this idea of learning and embracing certain aspects of the culture that is behind a language, and which can help them, learners, and also the professionals, and meaning teachers and mostly translators and interpreters, to work with the English language to achieve further proficiency, particularly in the area of phonetics and phonological aspects of English, which is actually the area that I work with mostly, right? The students keep wondering about aspects like accent and regional variations, and it's sometimes very difficult for us professors to actually tell them, particularly in the early stages of the 4-year courses. Courses are, the majors are rather long in this country. They take 4 years to become teachers of English, 4.5 years in some cases, or interpreters for that matter. And it takes them a long time, and it's sort of difficult to start telling them about accents at a very early stage, but it's important for them. However, on this same line of students of more advanced levels of English, right, towards the 4th and 5th years of their majors, they refer difficulties at the moment of progressing, right? Most of the students have to sit the CAE test here, the Cambridge CAE test, and they find it difficult to move into more advanced or proficient levels. And we found out that some of those difficulties have to do with the inability of the students of embracing the culture behind a language. This including the very concept of accent and regional variation, because they keep fishing for chunks of language that are not really there, and they sort of start guessing the sound repertoire to choose. So it makes it very difficult also for us teachers and professors to tackle with certain specific weaknesses, particularly in the area of pronunciation, because we don't know whether to tell them to speak with a more European variation of English or a more American variation of English. This is particularly important for the future interpreters, as they sense future interpreters who are going to be interpreters of Spanish, English, Spanish. They feel that there's a very aggressive competition for them in terms of their level of spoken English when having the chance to participate as interpreters from Spanish into English. So they keep asking these questions on how to improve. We found out that mostly this is a very interesting and actually part of an ongoing research project that we're working on. Embracing certain aspects of culture is quite valuable, and it's more like the way through which these problems, one way or another, will be will be tackled with. Mostly students want to know whether there's one accent or another to use, and they feel that they can't go on if they don't actually take on one particular regional variation of English, because they believe that they cannot move on in the path to proficiency. Well, that is yet to be proved, because we haven't really completed the research as such, but it's what we're currently working on. We've started by having the students, again, particularly those on the area of translation and interpretation, to work in mirror classrooms with students from various universities around the world, so they can interact with native speakers and non-native speakers, actually, in order to have them improve their English repertoire, particularly in the area of phonetics, because they want to improve their English, their spoken English, as I was saying, particularly interpreters, but they find it difficult at the moment of choosing one line or another. Besides, Chile is a one language culture, is a very monolingual country, and I would dare say on the verge of xenophobia, and at some points very much endemic in the culture of the country. So it's a language that, culturally speaking, you don't need here. You don't need to know English to go to the bank or to the hospital. So sometimes exposing students to talk to conversation situations with other speakers around the world who actually need this language for their everyday lives would sort of give them a scope on how to improve their English and move into this path of native-like level of English, as some authors actually refer. But it's actually what we've been working on presently, and it seems interesting. It seems promising. It's a work in progress, for that matter. That's about what I wanted to share on my side. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you, Professor Torrejon. So do you, colleagues, panelists, do you have any questions or comments?
Can I make will you allow me to make a little parallel? I'm teaching, among other things, teaching translation at Orléans University with second year masters. And I'd say 2/3 of the class are French. The rest come from all over the world. But these are small classes, no more than 25, 30 at the most. I find that because I'm doing literary translation, this is French into English. For them, especially for my French audience, my French students, this particular work is more challenging than, of course, working the other way around, translating from a given language into their mother tongue, which happens to be French. Here, they find it very demanding, and they actually say it cognitively. Switching from one language to the other over a span of, say, 2 hours, concentrating, reading, analyzing, and so on. There's so many operations to do at the same time, and it's always dual. It's always you're always converting something one way or the other. So there we are. And classically, the first 2 or 3 weeks of classes, students, I realize, don't understand what I mean practically when I say for next week, I'd be most grateful if you could prepare this class. So I said, I can hear them talking among themselves saying, but it's the professor who should be, the teacher should be preparing the class. What's he talking about? And or they'll say that to me, but what do you mean? Do you mean we'll be doing the class together? And I said, well, in a way, yeah. No, what I mean is what the German translators used to call Kleinarbeit. You should be doing. That's preparation work. The extra linguistic dimension of the translation you have to take into account. You got it. So there we're back to the problem of reading, consulting encyclopedias, not just reverso on the internet or so on. I'm not saying it's no good, but it's not enough. And reading things that are liminal, that are peripheral maybe, but do have some bearing on the topic, on the language, on the idiom which is used by this specific author who happens to be writing fiction and so on. And so let's say he's a novelist or something. He's got his own style. There's something idiosyncratic about it. There's also something to do with his region, like it was mentioned just before. And so all these things you have to take into account. It's not just a mechanical operation, converting something from French into English. That's it. Mission accomplished. No, it's never that simple. And of course, this sounds obvious to you, I suppose, but I keep telling them, look, because they're expecting a Vulgate. They're expecting one standard translation, which is perfect, ausgezeichnet, really perfect. So what about the Bible, for instance? This is just one example, but or the great novels. How many translations are available in French or of IV Mir, for example, or Brata Karamazov, whatever? It's just incredible, and it's not sufficient to say, oh, this one's better than the other. They all have their merits and so on, and they can be almost situated in time and so on and so forth. And once they've understood this, classes become a lot more interesting, and their work becomes a pleasure. I mean, for most of them, I think, not just a duty they have to accomplish. I have to prepare the class. I have to come along with my document.
I am very sorry for interrupting you at this point. Well, thank you, but it's just because we have to move on a little bit. But thank you for your very valuable contribution. And so the next speaker is Jose Ruiz Perez from the Universidad Santo Tomas, Puerto Montt. He is the head of the English teaching department. So, Jose, or Professor Ruiz, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation. And since we don't have a lot of time, I would like to focus on the experience that we've had here in the south of Chile concerning cross-cultural communication. Well, I've been doing this job, teacher training, for over 20 years. And something that we have noticed here is that, well, basically the students that we receive at university don't have a strong language background concerning English, right? So for them is rather difficult when they encounter native speakers to establish communication fluently or effectively, especially when they're going to become teachers of English in the future. So how have we tried to deal with this issue? Well, we have found teachers, university teachers, who are native speakers of English, teachers from the US and teachers from South Africa and from England. So I can say that I've been lucky to be able to find these teachers here in the South, which is not easy. Why is this relevant? Because when we talk about cross-cultural communication, it's much easier when a native speaker of the language talks to you about it, right? And our teachers have become a sort of, how should I say, ambassadors of their own countries, you see? So it's much easier when I can ask you, what are weddings like in your country? What are funerals like in your country? It's much easier when a native speaker from that country talks to you about that. It's been a very good experience here. Students are very grateful for that. And it has been very useful for their own careers, right? Since their background, as I said before, is not very strong concerning English, and they don't have the chance, most of them don't have the chance to travel abroad and go to an English-speaking country, this has been very useful to them. Now, the second point here that I would like to make is that when they work with their own students, I'm sorry, is my microphone too low? maybe?
Well, that's just perfect. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. So that is an element that we consider as adding diversity to our classroom, right? Especially when we are dealing with future English teachers. And as I said before, it's been a very good experience, not only for us as an institution, but for our students. That's it.
All right. Thank you very much, Professor Perez. Ruiz.
Ruiz.
Yeah, but Ruiz, sorry.
Yes.
But that's truly part of intercultural communication, to learn proper names properly.
Well,
dear Chairman.
That's exactly what we're doing now.
Right. Absolutely. And I'm just circling back to one of the remarks today. Well, dear panelists, any questions or remarks? Comments? Okay, yeah.
Just quite briefly, I just wanted to say hello to Jose, an old colleague from a long time. And also just echo what he says. The background is very meager here in Chile. The policies, the government policies in teaching of English are policies as they sound. They just end there on just campaigning, right? We're going to. I remember there was a politician who said in 2008. Please correct me, colleagues. That by 2010, this country was going to be bilingual.
That was a dream.
That was a fantasy. It never happened, particularly with the amount of hours that students have in English. I mean, and the conditions in which English is taught at schools. 45 students, 1 hour and a half chronological, 1.5 chronological hours. There's absolutely no learning there. And in the end, as Jose says, it's just students who have who've had the fortune of traveling, and sometimes children particularly children of naval officers and who have been stationed abroad, particularly the United States and England, who have a better background in English. But the rest is something that we have to cope with. And I just wanted to to emphasize it. Of course, this point one way or another.
And if I can add something else, is that our context will always be a foreign language context. So our students, I mean, after the class is over, they go out. I mean, they don't go to the bus station and buy a ticket and they speak English to buy the ticket. They don't get in a taxi and talk in English to the taxi driver. So the chances to use language are very poor, unfortunately. And what we have done, this idea of having native speakers, I mean, teachers of English, literature and linguistics, with teachers with master's degrees, which has been very good for the students. That has been really helpful to them, culturally speaking.
All right, thank you. And there is a question from Professor Elena Dominguez Romero.
Hello, Elena.
Well, we cannot hear you, sorry.
Well, I also wanted to say hello to my dear friend Jose. We met in London many years ago, but yeah, we're still friends, right, Jose?
Yes,
so I just wanted to just contribute to the discussion by saying that, well, here in Madrid we have bilingual schools. We are supposed to have a bilingual system, public school or system. All of our schools are supposed to be bilingual schools. We teach history through English. We teach many core subjects through English, but still our students are not bilingual.
Yeah, some schools are doing that here. Yes, some schools are doing that here, but with the background the students have, it's not so simple.
Right.
Only a very select group of schools do that. But it's not for the general public. No, it's not.
In here, this is for the general public, but still we cannot say that our students are bilingual students, even if of course they acquire history through English and they acquire science through English, they're not bilingual. And then if you visit like bilingual and non-bilingual groups, English groups, you see that the difference is not that important. So that those students who attend the bilingual section, they are not bilingual. It's not only that they are not bilingual, it is that the level of English is not that high. So this is just to be considered. It's just like, well, they don't know how to say patata in Spanish because they learn, or riñón in Spanish, kidney in Spanish because that's something they learn through English, but then they're not bilingual either. So this is a bit confusing. That's just that's my contribution. Thank you. Nice to see you, Jose.
Nice to see you too.
All right, well, thank you. And the floor is given to Professor Cristian Hernán Sanhueza Campos from the Universidad de Concepción. Right, so Professor Campos, the floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Yes, thank you to the Southern Federal University for this invitation. Julia, Mary, Svetlana, Alexei, everyone there. I've been lucky enough to be there a couple of times, 3 times actually, sharing research, doing workshops, and so we've had a very productive and cooperative relationship, I don't know, since the year 2010 something. So my intention today for this cross-cultural communication in today's world roundtable would be to share an experience we've been having actually since the year 2018 with the teaching of Spanish as a second language to a group of Haitian immigrants. One of the many concerns EFL teacher trainers is to provide opportunities for the student teachers not only to learn the language, the target language, but also to the target culture. Today's and future language teachers will face cross-cultural communication challenges more often than not in this ever-increasing globalized world. The immigration phenomenon in Chile had always been an issue concerning the socio-political ambit, as all the major immigrant groups came from neighboring countries with Spanish-speaking backgrounds. This changed some years ago when a massive influx of Haitian immigrants started to arrive in Chile. The issue then became also sociocultural, and one of the main challenges was the communicative barrier. This brief comment or discussion will focus on a teaching experience a group of English as a foreign language student teachers had when teaching Spanish as a second language to Haitian immigrants residing in their hometown. The situation was very unique. A small group of student teachers of English tried to teach Spanish to a large group of Creole speakers of different ages. Cross-cultural communication for Chilean people in general up to this point was very scarce, and when it did take place, it mainly faced cultural or dialectal differences as Spanish was the shared language. Cross-cultural communication for this particular group of people in this teaching learning experience took a completely different meaning as they were confronted with the seemingly obvious cultural differences, but also with the most overt language differences and difficulties. This experience has been replicated since 2018, when it first started on campus, and has only suffered a brief halt because of the pandemic situation, but we're making efforts to resume activities in virtual mode soon. This Spanish as a second language course originated from the municipalities' need to provide the Haitian population with basic language training to be able to work and become more active members of the community. The municipality's education department reached out to the University of Concepcion to explore the possibility of offering a Spanish as a second language course to this specific group of people. The University Outreach Department thought the English teaching program was better equipped to fulfill this task, as we train Spanish-speaking people to be English language teachers. So the acquisition, the teaching, and the learning of a second language is at the heart of our daily work. With this idea in mind, we thought of this as a volunteer work program and recruited a group of highly motivated EFL teaching students to teach their mother tongue as a second language to people who spoke very little Spanish, if any at all. This course consists of 10 weeks with 2 90-minute evening sessions, using a mixture of different methods and approaches for the class. And what is very valued and effective is the fact that we use a collaborative approach to teaching, forming different communities for situated learning. In general, the teaching learning aspect of this very motivating project has worked well. However, the main challenges we faced were cross-cultural. We noticed, for example, that they paid more attention to their male tutors than their female tutors. We couldn't make them write too much as they were not very literate. We had to privilege the oral production, repetition, and visual stimuli became more and more useful and relevant for this particular classroom. All of them attended as much as they could, and they were always very tired as classes took place after work, which was very strenuous for them because they usually did farming work. Many of them were very young people, or are very young people, but also many are of old age. We know all of the difficulties this brings about for language learning. We managed to do work after a period of adjusting to Creole, which was constantly used in the classroom by them. The use of English, as some of instruction and material were easier to introduce because of the ubiquitous power of English, and Spanish as a target language, of course. Together with all the Chilean-specific Spanish variations, not only in pronunciation, but also in vocabulary and idiomatic expressions used in daily life in Chile. It has always been very challenging for our Spanish learners to participate in class, lose their natural fear to speak in another language, and assume the new sociolinguistic reality. It has also been challenging for us as their teachers, not only to teach them, but to get to them, empathize with their situation, and also help them navigate a particularly discriminatory community. The Chilean society has unfortunately proved to be very discriminatory, especially with people of color, even on campus. In the end, it has always been gratifying to give them their A1, A2 level certificates of Spanish and see how they improve their linguistic abilities in the target language, and also how they show this small course helped them integrate themselves with the community to really have a chance to communicate cross-culturally. That's it.
Right, thank you very much, Professor Campos. So, dear panelists, would you like to ask a question or make a remark? Excuse me. Professor Romero, you're welcome.
Hi, well, thank you very much, Professor Sangüesa, for your very interesting presentation, for sharing this experience with us. I would have liked to participate in such study, to be part of it, but, because it sounds like very interesting and motivating. So the thing is that you have like cross-cultural issues, right? There were cross-cultural issues when teaching Spanish. It's like the thing is that do you think that it would be possible to teach culture through Spanish or to teach culture with Spanish or English. It's like, okay, we need to teach values. It's like somehow, right? Because we're talking about sexism, machism. It's like racism, right? Even on campus, when you were talking about some racist issues, it's like, is it necessary to teach values? Because that's another big or huge topic, right? It's like they say that, well, you have a look at the textbooks and the course book and materials. It's like no reference to values at all, but it's like it is necessary to teach values, to teach cross-cultural issues, to teach cross-cultural communication, and that involves or implies values. It's like, why do you pay more attention to your male teacher than to your female teacher? Or why do you consider that your I don't know, classmate is not as important, I don't know, as valid or important or human as you are because he is a person of color? It's just like, do you think that it would be necessary to put a focus, to put the emphasis on cross-cultural issues, and even if this involves or implies teaching values?
Yes.
That's my.
We realized what you're saying along the way. We when we started out this project, we just focused on the linguistic aspect of the course, and then we realized we had to sort of prepare ourselves as well culturally, prepare the group of students who were going to be in charge of this language course, to make them aware of certain differences, cultural differences, but from an integrative point of view, you know, and from an inclusive point of view as well, and not to observe the whole phenomenon as from a higher position, you know. And we realized that actually paying attention to these aspects, to these value aspects, and beyond, you know, the linguistic nature of the course, helped us better to connect, to teach eventually, and to understand their situation, to empathize, as I said. And when this happened, the teaching and the learning and the acquisition seemed to, you know, sort of become easier in a way.
Right.
So yes, it's very important.
It's just like they need to learn like the target language, but also the target culture, right?
Culture,
exactly. If they want to communicate and to communicate effectively, they need to know how to communicate, and they need to come to know the. Yeah, that's thank you very much. Very interesting indeed.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And there is a quick remark from Professor Ruiz. Yeah.
Yes, just a quick question about the material that you use for this course. I was in charge of a project like this with people from Haiti, also from Haiti. And the problem that we had was that we could not find teaching material for teaching Spanish. I mean, you go to a bookstore and you try to find a book to teach Spanish and you can't find anything. Even if you go to Santiago, the capital, and you go to different places and you can find books for teaching Spanish. You can, but they're from Spain. And we know that the differences are big, right? The accent, the vocabulary, expressions. So it's kind of difficult. And there we have a kind of cultural clash, if I may say so. So how did you deal with the material that you used?
That happened to us as well. We were confronted with the fact that there wasn't material specially designed to teach Chilean Spanish, and so it was Spanish from Spain. And so when we used some of that material, but when it came to expressions, especially idiomatic expressions and certain cultural aspects, we adapted it. We changed. We took the material and we sat down and we adapted the material We even adapted the tests, because then we gave them tests at the end and along the way. And so we, instead of actually, using the words that were suggested in the material, we would replace this particular expressions or words or structure with more natural Chilean Spanish and Chilean expressions. The University of Concepcion also has a department, an L department, L being Español como lengua extranjera. And so that also helped, because they had some already adapted material and created material created by them to teach international students at the University of Concepcion. So we use also some of that. But yes, it is a challenge, and it's yes. It's complicated, and ever since we started, we've been creating our own, adapting more, and always looking for resources in that area. And so the visual, the audiovisual material that we could use, especially coming from what Elena was saying, it would be very useful and very, very interesting. And we've had to these times to adapt in that respect, even though we had to stop for a little while because of the pandemic. Now the idea is to resume activities during the second semester, because the municipality and with the university are trying to make efforts to also provide the infrastructure, the minimum infrastructure we will need, because these Haitian immigrants, some of them don't have cell phones, many of them don't have a computer, many don't have a Wi-Fi connection in the places, etc., etc. Yes.
Thank you very much.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your perspective. So the correct way to say is Professor Senueza, right? Not campus, as I learned it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I apologize. And the next speaker is Professor Deepak Rajpant from University of Trento, Italy, talking about cross-cultural communications in today's world. All right. So the floor is yours. Well, I'm afraid we still cannot hear you.
We can.
Oh,
can
you can
hear me now? Yeah. Me gusta mucho oír castellano. Gracias.
Excelente.
Qué bien, qué maravilla.
Qué gusto.
Fantástico.
Thank you, my friends. I'm happy to join you, and thank you for inviting me to make part. Actually, I learned badly many languages. The only language that I learned systematically, supposed to be good, but I never speak that language, and that is Sanskrit. The only language that I learned systematically is Sanskrit, which I never speak with anybody. I only read the text, old text. Well, by profession, I'm an anthropologist, but I just drifted to become a professor of strategic planning and management. That's what I do. And now I'm slowly retreating, gradually, semi-retired, almost semi-retired. About the cross-cultural communication, I just wanted to say that I haven't really focused very much on it, but I have lived it. I'm 62 years old, and only 1/3 of that 62 years I have passed in my native country. I was born in the central Himalayas in Nepal. And I lived there only 1/3 of my life. The 2/3 of my life I have been living in other countries, now in Europe, before in Asia, Taiwan, India, United States, England as well, and other parts. So it has been a life of cross-cultural experience, but I haven't theoretized on it. And so far the language is concerned, my ability to manage somehow some languages, 6, 7 maybe, but not good anyone. I'd write a little bit better in English, maybe. That's in which I use my articles. All the other languages I just can manage only. But what about the cross-cultural experience? I have just 3 points I would like to share with you. The first thing is that we need, when we have some in business or in political relationship or in business relationship or whatever it may be, I see that people don't do. No, I'm not talking about the students. I'm talking about the people who deal with international business, who has intercultural situations. They are not doing enough homework to understand the cultural and historical background of their partners with whom they have to deal. That's one thing. And that is where I think we should teach our students, at least, or to whom to do some homework, to do some homework about your interlocutors with whom you are going to deal, to learn about their history and about their culture. Maybe not so, but at least some basic things. And the second point is, we must try to find some common ground. Yes, the cultures are different everywhere, and the history is different, but there are some things which are very common. And humanity is above all nations, like spirituality is above all religions. So this, in the same way, there's a way with those values of humanity. There are some basic human values, which should be the basis of our relationship with the others. I suppose so. And the third thing that I would like to say is that as a teacher or as a consultant or teacher or a planner, we have to give some serious thought about correcting the narratives. We are bombarded by the media, and then it's all geopolitical narrative that is conditioning people's perception of the other people, other nations, other cultures. For example, in the last 12, 13 years that I have been living here in Europe, between the United States and Western Europe, the image that they have been portraying, the narrative that is going about Russia especially, is so negative. It is so, and this is so, and the whole cultural traditions, the history, the literature, the music, they're all overlooked. So this is our duty to contrast from any side to any side, from any part of the world to the other part. So, the neutrality and loyalty of academics is very important. We must remain true to what is, there is a search of a common ground, and trying to explore the values in other people's culture and not to be swayed by the geopolitical narrative. And here the basic problem, what I see in the cross-cultural communication now, we can talk about this infinitely, but the main problem that remains in business as well as in cultural or commercial relationship or political relationship, the main problem is the geopolitical narrative. The geopolitical narratives are a very opportunistically crafted and repeated through the media that are controlled by the powers of every place. And this is where the trouble starts. And the people become unnecessarily influenced by the narratives, the geopolitical narrative. I would say that's all what I want to say. About the teaching now in this particular period, with this, we are all doing teleworking. Of course, teleworking is helpful to follow up. Digitalization is not innovation. Digitalization is not it. Digital is just an instrument. It is what you use, and it's very good in the follow-up, in the follow-up communication. But to start with it and to depend on it or to elaborate it as the great medium of the new era it's a mistake. It's like the artificial intelligence in the warfare and the military matters. At the end, you always win with the good soldiers and good commanders. You don't win with the great technology. And that's the same thing about also teaching or research. The digital is just an instrument. We shouldn't confuse that with innovation. Innovation is a solution. Trying as a continuous search for the solution. So That's what all I wanted to share with you. The 3 points I want to repeat. We must learn and we must help others to do the homework about the others, history and culture. The second is that we must try to find a common ground in spirituality and in humanity. And spirituality means also art. Art is spiritual. I mean, you may be an atheist, but you can still be a spiritual person. Spirituality is nothing, it's above the religions, like the humanity is above the nations. So this is the most must be value-centered. Our communications must be value-centered, and there's a lot of common ground, actually. And the third thing is we must contrast the geopolitical narrative. We must work very hard on it with our students, with our colleagues, with everybody, that we try to look deeper into the other cultures, other nations, other civilizations, and not only rely and especially be skeptic of the media, very much skeptic of the mass media. I just thank you very much for giving me this little, and me gustó mucho el castellano. No, trabajado muchas veces en América Latina.
Muy buen castellano.
Gracias.
Sí que habla bien, sí.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so very much for your contribution. Well, I could just notice a hand and it disappeared. I guess it was, well,
I just wanted to clap, but it was sorry.
all right. It was a round of applause. Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah. Well, dear panelists, do you have any questions or maybe comments? All right. Well, and I guess those 3 key points summarize perfectly what we have to do in terms of inter and cross-cultural communication competence development, if you will. Right. And the next speaker is Jose Manuel Raya. So the head of the language school in Spain. That's it. And if that is correct, you came to visit Taganrog, right? And you worked there, or you spoke at a conference, right? I guess
I went there. I was working in Taganrog 1 year and in Krasnodar another one.
Oh,
so, yeah.
Well, great.
Wonderful places. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, Professor Raya, then the floor is yours.
I'm going to do it fast because everybody has spoken about the more or less the same things. So one thing I want to mention is, as Mr. Coates says before, about 5 minutes coffee. So it's an activity we did some years ago, but so we are living in the south of Spain, in the rural area, and it was very difficult to have British people and students who wanted to learn English. But well, we are fighting to this situation, and we went to different coffee bars, and it was fantastic because it was a second working life for pensioners, UK pensioners, who were living in the area. They came here and they spent their free time with the students from our locations, who wanted to learn English and wanted to speak without a teacher who said them, you need to change this word, you need to do different things without mistakes. So they wanted to communicate, and it was very nice. Nowadays, this situation about the Brexit and the pandemic, so we can't do anything like this. But something that I want to say that maybe is the same thing in other countries. In Spain, or in the south of Spain, we are crazy about getting a document to show our level of English. So, you know, official accents, Cambridge, Trinity, Anglia. If you want to go to another university, TOEFL or IELTS. So, you know, but a thing that we are finding now is a lot of people want to work in a state with no government works. So they want to get a diploma, a certificate, without studying. So they want the paper, but not the knowledge. So something that we are finding now, I don't know, maybe Elena have the same problem in Madrid, maybe, I don't know. So a lot of people want to get this exam from British Council that it's called APTIS. It's a multi-level test. Now Cambridge have another one. It's the name is Skill. So they are multi-level tests, but they are not official diplomas. So
but they are easier to, sorry to interrupt you, but it's like they say that APTIS is like easier to pass, right, Jose Manuel?
It's true. It's completely true. I think it's the anti-English. So, because it's not necessary to know anything about English to get a good mark. Of course, so you have to study different, how to do the exam, how to prepare the exam. You pass it, always you have a diploma because you always have a mark. So maybe A1, A2, B1, B2. But, you know, if you want to work in a state school, for example, you need to have at least B2 or C1, because as you said before, I don't remember who said about the bilingual schools and these kind of things, something that is completely wrong in Spain. Bilingual is everybody, I can see. But, so, you know, you are a bilingual school if you can teach natural science, social science, maybe, and that's all. So something that we have to think about this, or the problem we have, is these people who want to get the diploma and not to know the level of English. According to this, I'm saying this because when you get the diploma and you go to school and you want to teach to any course, and you said, do you have knowledge of English? Yes, I have my diploma, yeah, the C2, the B1, the B2, but after this you don't know anything about English. And there are a lot of people who are studying from the childhood, and they are getting official diplomas like Cambridge, I said before, Trinity, Anglia. They are cleverer than teachers sometimes, speaking about English. But something that is very important, now we are finding people who want to, so who don't want to go to university and want to work as a plumber, mechanic, electrician. So we think they are very necessary in our time too. And they are trying to study specific courses. And it's very nice to find people who want to communicate to British or people from other countries who can speak in English. But so this is true. We are having this kind of problem. I don't know. I'm very interested in what is happening in your countries about this kind of exams, because I know in South America, APTIS is working very well. Skill too. In Italy, we have the ITEP, if I'm not wrong. It's all these exams are by computer, so they are easier than the paper ones. And well, so this is the problem we are going to find in the next 3, 4, 5 years, because we are going to find children with better knowledge than teachers. I don't know if you have the same problems. I'm very interested in knowing this.
But why do you say that we are having teachers, all kids with higher level than teachers? I don't get that point, Jose Manuel.
Yes, I'm going to explain to you. Imagine that you want to work in a school, in a state school, so you need the B2 to get marks for the C1, and you do the APTIS exam. And you go to a school with this level of English, that for me it's not very high, and you have students who has been studying English from the childhood, and they have a good level of English. So sometimes children can correct teachers in the school. Only about the diplomas we are selling, we are finding in outside of the schools. So do you accept people in your universities or in your schools with multi-level test to teach children? So do you understand what I mean?
But are you asking me, Jose Manuel?
In general, so in general, but yes, Elena, you can find in Spain a lot of schools, not universities maybe, but the schools, of course. If you want English teachers in the school, they don't need to have a degree.
English teachers, to be teachers, they study for 4 years plus their final project, so it's like 3 or 3.5. That's for primary education, and then for secondary education it's like a 4-year 4+1, because it's like
the master degree. Yeah,
that's it, which is compulsory. It's a teaching master's degree. So
but these teachers in the school, to get good extra marks to be teachers in the state school, they need to have levels of English. So from the Common European Framework of Reference of Languages,
right, if you're talking about teachers of English, well, that's not the case.
Yeah,
if you're talking about these history teachers who need to teach history through English in bilingual schools, well, maybe those teachers lack you know, the specific skills to teach history through English, and they could do better. I don't know about it. I said before that I don't quite see the point in this bilingual education system, which is not really bilingual, but I would say that applies, maybe, if you say so, it could apply to this CLIL teachers, right? But not to English teachers, you know, because some of these teachers all of a sudden have been like forced by the system to teach through English, and maybe they were not ready to do that, even if of course they had to pass some specific exams, attending to official language schools and all that. But I could agree with you but to some extent, but only regarding CLIL teachers, not English teachers.
So Elena, you should come. Sorry, excuse me. You should come to the rural areas in Andalusia, because it's completely wonderful to find an English teacher here who teach in English, because nobody teaches in English.
Oh, really? I'm Andalusian myself.
Yeah.
But I will double check. Yeah.
So because it's a complete problem, and with these kind of certificates that you can show and everybody study and get easily, so it's very difficult to find. So you can see Cambridge. I don't know if Mr. Coates who works with Cambridge or not, but you can see Cambridge was losing a lot of candidates because aptis was going up. They decided to get out lingual skill to fight against aptis, but it's the same. So they are killing official exams.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Professor Raya, for the contribution. And we are about to listen to the last speaker, Marcela Vildesola Campas. Well, I hope I said your name correctly. So the Director of Studies of a Teacher Training Program at a university in Chile. Well, okay, Professor Vildesola, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my working environment has changed a little bit though, but you will know about it as I speak. Well, we all know culture is a way of thinking and living through which we acquire attitudes, values, norms, and beliefs that are taught and reinforced by people around us, right? Culture seems to be a complex concept, complex and super broad. Our cultural understanding of the world and everything in it ultimately affects our style of communication as we start picking up ways of one's culture at around the same time we start learning to communicate. Culture influences the words we speak and our behavior. As a university teacher, I was aware of this, and I knew that the acknowledgement of other cultures in the English classroom was a standard Chilean universities had to meet, and I believe I was working towards that. I used to teach different courses of literature to future teachers of English that did not like reading. However, life convinced me of making a change. And now I see myself working as a school teacher of English as a foreign language. At first, I thought this change would make my own world become smaller, and my possibilities to reflect about cross-cultural awareness were going to be smaller as well. But I was wrong, totally wrong. I have learned that cross-cultural communication can be enhanced wherever we are. Therefore, it could be enhanced from my new tiny spot. My new tiny spot is special though. It is an international school. I am a school teacher at an institution that works for the development of international mindedness in students. It is a school that aims to develop inquiring, knowledgeable and caring young people who help to create a better and more peaceful world through cross-cultural understanding and respect. In my content-oriented mind, in my content-oriented teaching habits, it was hard to believe that this could be possible on a daily basis. In fact, my first challenge was to actually believe that this was possible. The second challenge for me was to walk that path step by step in order to encourage students become active, compassionate, and lifelong learners who understand that other people with their differences can also be right. In order to accomplish this goal, language is essential, of course, and our job as teachers is to make students value language as a central element to develop critical thinking, which is crucial for the cultivation of intercultural understanding, as well as for becoming internationally minded and responsible members of local, national, and global communities. Education can act locally while aiming globally. From my spot as a second language teacher, my responsibility is to encourage students to develop daily communicative habits that can help them become cosmopolitan learners. Why? Because the world around us is becoming more and more diverse. Because if we look around, we will realize it is essential for humans to understand each other, to get to agreements, to fight less, and to respect more. Our communicative skills need improvement at a global scale, and also at a local scale, with our relatives, within our homes, within our communities, and of course towards other communities that might have a different worldview. Young learners need to learn to use language as a vehicle for thought, creativity, reflection, learning, self-expression, analysis, and social interaction. It is important that they can develop the skills involved in listening, speaking, reading, and writing in a second language, but not only to be able to use a different code, but to understand other people, to learn from them, to understand other cultures, to respect them, and to appreciate them. How do we achieve this at a school? Designing classroom activities in which students use the language with meaningful purposes, using the reading skill as an open door to enter new cultures and explore new perspectives. Yes, because cosmopolitan learners need to be cosmopolitan readers. This would include the ability and willingness to identify with others who are not like us by developing skills that cross borders and travel both conceptual and imaginative distances in an attempt to understand others. Again, the question is the same. How do we achieve that at school? One possible answer, and it has worked in my case, is by reading books that were originally written in languages other than English. This has become a must in our daily lessons. This everyday practice forces us to leave our own customs and beliefs aside and try to see the world from a different perspective. It helps us see language as a means to value other cultures, It enhances students' curiosity to inquire on their own, and it provides them with language to show they care about other people. How do young learners react to this? We teachers elicit their reactions in different ways, and we must be prepared to receive all sorts of responses, which in many cases have given us valuable lessons. They love interacting with people from other cultures. In fact, at school, there are foreign students and foreign teachers as well. And I can say our learners make a genuine effort to understand reality from different perspectives. They question the contradictions of the adult world in terms of social interaction. They show their delight when other people's beliefs make sense to them. They sort of spread the word as well to their friends and relatives about this. They have affirmed that people in general should read more. They look around and they claim that we should read books or stories that could help us overcome the conflicts we are facing now as a society. Conflicts related to, let's say, social inequality, to discrimination, for example. Some of them have claimed that we Chileans should read more books or stories created by Mapuche authors, for example, or by authors from any other ethnic group present in our country. In that way, we could understand them better and we could have better relationships with them. As you can see, cross-cultural communication is a topic of great interest for young learners as well, and they develop it from their tiny spot. That used to be the school, but nowadays it's their living room in their houses in front of the computer. In our globalized society, paying attention to the importance of cross-cultural communication is crucial. And you have all talked about it today. It is important in order to get to agreements, in order to live more peacefully. We cannot avoid it, and it is important for us to promote it, to promote empathy, and to dare to make changes in our daily life to communicate with others more effectively. It is true, I work at a school that probably is not a representative example of the Chilean educational context, but no matter where we are, I am convinced that we can take actions in our everyday life. We should start locally, but thinking globally.
Right. So thank you very much for your contribution. So are there any questions or comments, dear panelists?
I have a comment, if I may. I would like to tell Professor Bildo Sola that I can't agree with you. You know why? Because you said that you had like that your spot was tiny spot. Wrong. What you do is amazing. You see, what you do is amazing. You have like a huge responsibility because you are not teaching English to students. You are forming citizens of the world, right? So your responsibility is so important, so big that what you do cannot be tiny or small, because you are creating citizens, and those citizens, of course, need to have some values, need to develop empathy and the empathy skills, right? Because it's just like it's not enough if you just teach like maths, history, language, English. Well, it's not enough, right? It's like you need to go beyond that and teach values and teach empathy skills to the citizens of the future, right? That's so what you do is amazing, Marcela. I call you Marcela because you are.
Thank you. And it's never enough.
Right. So don't think that what you do is not important. What you do is very important, right? And what we do is important because of what you do, right? What we do at university level, higher education level is important because what you do at secondary education level is important too, or even more important because you're in direct contact with these young students who need that education in values, right?
We could not agree more. I guess all of us. I will dare speak for everyone. Yeah. Well, that is absolutely true. Well, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
I'd like to make a brief comment and also congratulate Marcela again. Just like Elena, I do believe that it's a very, very, very important job you do at schools. And we have to deal with the, considering that we have to deal with the particular situation that our country hasn't got any policies regarding cross-cultural relations. There's just at the moment, and this has to do a lot with Christian and Jose were saying, it's just a matter of admitting people without really sharing our culture with them, and with a population that is not really willing to share the immigrants' point of view and vision. Well, and in terms of English, which is the language that we actually work with, there's no political willingness to actually have a particular let's say purpose and objective in learning English. Well, and finally, something that is very important in the work of school, as Elena was saying, that Marcela is actually working on forming citizens in a country where constitutionally there's no definition of citizen.
Exactly.
And, there's no definition of citizen, and there's no definition of which values should the citizens have. It's quite a difficult job for professors and for teachers at school, considering that there's not a guidebook or a rule in the constitution of the country that tells us what kind of individual we want walking the city. And so everybody has their own idea of justice and social behavior. It's complicated. So congratulations again.
Thank you. Well, it has been also complicated for us to work without any prescription as teachers of English in this school. We do not follow a course book. We only know that we have to go after peace. We need to run to try to catch it because it's urgent. But there's no prescription. And so we examine books looking for that. We try to make an effort to come up with ideas of books that have not been written in English originally. Because our aim is to teach English through them, but also teach them to appreciate cultures that probably are not that well known. And it has been a challenge. Yes, it has also been a challenge to deal with parents that probably were not that open at that at the beginning, because as you say, we live in conflicting times, I would say, as adults. And that's when kids do not understand. That's why I say that kids sometimes do not understand our own contradictions as adults, because they understand it easily and they can grasp it pretty easily, faster than us. But they go home and that's when they have to start doing their job.
Thank you. And Professor Sanueza.
Yes, I would like to ask how you sort of motivate and encourage students to do the readings and get familiar with a reading sort of process that lends itself for this approach to the values you want to achieve, you want to promote or model or modulate?
That's a good question. It was the question I had at the beginning. I didn't know how I was supposed to be doing such a thing. So imagine me coming from university teaching into this crazy thing. We have several hours of English with them during the week. At first, I had to learn to try to adopt a pace of reading. I have to model the reading process with them. I follow the 3 stages of a reading class. So setting the context every class is important. But before setting the context for each of the lessons, we have to set the context for the topic. Let's say, for example, 7th graders are reading a book about India and about the life of women in India. And so they have to do research on their own. Different topics are spread in groups. They do research in groups so that they can actually apply this sort of communication, conflict solving, decision making with others. They had to present. Now for this week, they had the idea of eating together, trying to simulate we're eating like in India or something like that. And that is to be done tomorrow. We have to come up with ideas, methodological ideas and strategies to make them go through the analysis of elements that are not like surface elements. We do not teach them, let's say, just vocabulary. We teach them themes. We work with empathy. We also go through some language features or features of speech, for example. But more than teaching them similes or metaphors, for example, we teach them how to view life in a different way, how to appreciate other people's customs, other people's ways of doing things. At first, what they did was to criticize India, for example. But now they are becoming like India lovers and they want to be there. And the book that we are using with them doesn't talk about the idealistic India we conceive in our minds. It analyzes issues like, for example, gender inequality, young girls getting married, or the fact that the protagonist doesn't know how to read. It's older than them, but she does not have access to education, poverty, widows being left aside in India. But even though there are things that in other contexts people would criticize, they have learned to appreciate them. Because in the end, what we do in every session is to tell them that they have to appreciate our differences. And that is something we do every lesson. So we start with an objective. We go through a couple of activities that try to tackle that objective. And then we sort of close the session, reminding them that we are here not to judge.
Yeah, well, and this is actually our ultimate goal, I guess. So if we teach them how to analyze but not to judge and to appreciate, I guess our goal is accomplished. Well, yeah, well, at least to a certain extent. Well, Professor Ruiz, if only very quickly, like 15 seconds and about 20 seconds to Professor Vidasola, and we are done at this point.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick question. You said that you don't use course books, right?
No, we don't.
Right.
Look, these are the books we use. These are like novels. And this is what we use to teach them English and to teach them and to take them along this process.
Okay, you focus more on social issues than on linguistic issues, right?
We know that
of the English.
Yeah, we know that language is essential. Their knowledge of vocabulary, their good use of grammar, semantics, and so on, is essential for them to convey ideas, is essential for them to get their message across, and also for them to understand, for them to acquire whatever knowledge we are giving them through the book. So we try to make these two things go hand in hand, But of course, we are not going to correct them all the time if they make pronunciation mistakes, for example, or if they confuse a word with another. Of course, if the mistake blocks communication and it's repeated over and over again, we are going to stop and we are going to say, look, there is another way to say this.
I do apologize. 5 seconds.
Yeah, language is a part of our teaching experience every week. We have goals per week in relation to language, but yeah, we pay more attention to this social perspective of the English lesson.
Okay,
thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the contribution. I do apologize to Deepak. I have to discard your question. Well, Professor Rajpant. Yeah. So we have come to the final point of our marathon, cross and intercultural marathon. Thank you ever so much for all your contributions. And to finalize this marathon, let me give the floor to Elena Zashitina, the Vice Dean of the Institute of Management in Economic, Ecological and Social Systems of Southern Federal University. Okay, Professor Zashitina, floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Professor Bakulev. Dear participants, today was really great events, I think, because all of yours have so many experience, so many interesting words, and I'm really appreciate from our side and from the side of Southern Federal University to all of yours for participating in these events, in this first cross-cultural marathon in the topic of our cross-cultural of the modern world. So I invite all of yours to our platform, like online open popular science lectures of EMS of Southern Federal University. So if you want, please speak with Professor Privalova or with me, and we will be glad to give a flow about 1 hour for all of your own research. There you speak with our professors, with our students, and so on. But for today, I think that we find all of interesting topic for our future communication, for our future connection. And once again, thank you all. Thank you, Professor Bakulev, for this beautiful moderation of our round table. And I'm really will be very glad to see all of yours in Southern Federal University. Of course, in first of all, in our physical form, in offline format, in our beautiful buildings. But in this case, before we couldn't do this, we will be glad to see you in our online events. And thank you all. Have a good day, and goodbye. Bye for our beautiful events.
May intercultural communication prosper.